We're going to start from the very beginning, and we're going to go through life. And so by the time we end up at about 10 to 1, because I'd like to get a lot of questions, you should be saying to yourself, it's 2011, why are we as a human race so stupid? Now, we're going to start at the very beginning. Now, you know what this is, right? I'm sure it's pornography in somebody's world, but I just wanted to show you, this is the earliest picture I have of myself. My mom and dad said, son, this is the earliest picture we have of you. And it represents you as well. This is how life starts. Very simple. Two half cells come together, and within 9 months, I don't know how many, but they're like billions and trillions of cells make up one of these little things. Have you got one of these at home? Okay. Now let me tell you how we are screwing up these little things royally. We're putting them in front of televisions way too early in life. And so what ends up happening is the TV is actually rewiring the circuitry of the brain of kids. It's been shown. The Canadian Pediatric Society, the American Academy of Pediatrics say, do not expose a child under the age of 2 to a television, because the television will actually rewire the circuitry in the brain. The brain is so fresh, it's looking for stimulation. You will never be able to stimulate a child like a TV can. And that's why it's hard to pull kids away from TVs, because they're mesmerized by them. Because the signals are going so quickly, the voice, the images. Watch an MTV video, a music video from the 80s compared to today. Do you think they've changed a bit? And that's why they just can't keep young people's attention anymore. I don't know what the hell they're thinking in these rooms, but they're at a stage that we as educators have got no clues. We're still in the old days where you think that the professor knows more than the students. You don't have a clue. They know far more than you. I don't try and impart knowledge anymore because the internet makes me irrelevant. What I try and do is show them what they can do with that knowledge, maybe where to go and get it and interpret it. But if you're still stuck in the old paradigm where you think you know more than the students, they're way ahead of the game. All right? So what we have to do is go, well, okay, if this is how we start off and you're telling me we're pretty perfect, where do we screw up? Well, let's start building the case of where we screw up. So we've got a world that we live in. And if you leave the world alone, before we came, it was a pretty nice place, right? Everything was working well, you know, there was enough resources, there was many different kinds of species, and then all of a sudden man shows up and man starts taking over. And as man starts taking over, the planet suffers. And as the planet suffers, we suffer. So I'm going to talk to you about suffering, pain. This is the emotional plot of this talk. I'm going to play with you so you're up, I'm going to bring you down to the bottom, I'm going to bring you back up, try and level it off, and leave you at the end with a high level of thinking. So your life will change. This is one of those 60-minute, wow, that really changed my life. Everything I eat, do, is changed as a result of stuff that he told me that I already knew, but it's just the way it's packaged together, all right? It's the way it's packaged together. So you take the entire population of the planet and you shrink it down to a village of 100. That's what the village looks like. 60 Asians, 14 Africans, 12 Europeans, 8 Latin Americans, 1 from South Pacific, 5 from America and Canada. So in essence, that means probably half of those is Canadian. Okay, so we make up like an infinitesimal small part of the population of the planet. Yet the reality is the majority of the people that live on the planet live in poverty, right? So oh, I know, it was so hard to come down here for lunch because you had so much choice of what to eat today, didn't you? And you probably didn't finish half of it. You probably didn't need it. You probably could skip lunch for the rest of your life and wouldn't even notice it. But you see what I'm saying? The things we worry about. So when you're going out to Holt Renfrew later, what bag should I get? Or guys at Canadian Tire, what tool should I get? We live on acreages, so what's the latest tool we need to get that we don't need, but we live on an acreage, so I need a bobcat because I live on an acreage. You got a bobcat? Yeah, I've got a bobcat. You think we could share one? No, we need our own bobcats. So the whole point is, we're wasting so much money in North America, it's not even funny. Let's collectively put our brains together, take this extra money that we're wasting, and send it to where it really needs to be. We can start with First Nation communities in Canada, we could start with the inner city, we can start with recent immigrants, we could start with a whole host of population, single moms, and the list goes on and on. What about university students? University of Alberta, I'm so proud to be a part of the University of Alberta. I've been here since 1980, and we have our own food bank. University of Alberta has its own food bank because students need to go to a food bank. to get an education, and if you're in a professional degree, so you can graduate with $250,000 debt. Looking for signs of intelligence, sir? Make notes, okay? And I'll help you if you're having trouble finding the intelligence. So simply put, you don't know how fortunate you are sitting where you're at. And I don't know how fortunate I am being able to sit up here and share this information with you, okay? I came here from Montreal in 1980, and I did my combined MD PhD, and then I was able to go to Hopkins and do some more degrees, all as a result of what this province gave me. And I know the life that it's afforded me because of the education. So I think that every Albertan should be able to go to college and university free of charge. They will more than pay their way back in society later, okay? So, no, please, don't encourage me with clapping, because then I think I'm a politician, and then I start talking very differently. So hold your applause till the very end. Otherwise, you're going to turn me into something that you don't want to see. This here represents where we came from. This is what the brain wants us to be doing. Constantly moving and constantly hungry. That's what we were programmed to do as hunter-gatherers. As humans, we need to be constantly moving, being alert for dangers, and constantly hungry, looking for the next meal. And within only the last 80, maybe 90 years, we've moved from this to what we are right now. And what we are right now, unfortunately, is this. So we've come from hunter-gatherers, which means you're constantly moving, constantly looking for food. Your brain is at its peak, and the brain is interpreting any excess weight and inactivity as it's time to hibernate. It's time to shut her down. That's what bears do, okay? So I believe, there's no theory or proof behind this, but all my readings are pointing to, I think, a lot of the depression and melancholy and unhappiness we're seeing in our world today, at least in North America, is due to the fact that we're inactive and overfed. So, I don't know much about happiness, but this guy looks mean, first of all, because he has to be mean, but this guy looks like he knows what he's doing in life, and he's not wasting much time doing it, as opposed to Harry here. I mean, Harry's got a lot of time, he's got a remote, he's got his beer, he's got his belly, and this is a lot of Harrys in the world today, right? They may not be as exaggerated as this, but I don't think the Harrys of the world and the Henriettas of the world are very happy. And I think the theory is very simple in my mind. We've got to get back to the basics. And the basics are, let's get active, and let's get mean, and let's get lean. Okay? Let's not be hungry. So that is why we need to talk about how do we get back to this state. Because we came here very quickly. And the brain is totally confused. The brain is nothing. It's just mush that sits in a skull that receives signals, and it processes the signals. It doesn't know that it's 2011. All it knows is it's been hunting, gathering for billions of years, and all of a sudden it doesn't have to do it. And it hasn't adapted properly. So talking to an audience as diverse as this is difficult at the best of times, but I need to know where you stand in this group. How many of you are the silent generation? Okay. How many of you are baby boomers? Okay, how many of you are Generation X? A lot of X's. How many Ys? Quite a few Ys. And Generation At is sort of the very current generation. Is there a Generation At here? Unreal. That's very rare you get every generation in the room. You know, I did some background reading, and I said, I know every generation except Generation Y. And I said to Jeff, why are they called Generation Y? And he goes, I don't know. Do you know why Generation Y is called Generation Y? It's actually so obvious, I don't know how I missed it. Generation Y, if you were to get them to stand up and turn around, that's what you would see. So that's why Generation Y is called Generation Y. Some signs of intelligence starting to develop. But it really doesn't matter what I want to say to you. What really matters is what's on your mind. Like, what do you want to get out of this short period of time that we have together, okay? Now, this room's small enough that I'm going to very rapidly find out, what do you want to get out of the rest of the presentation? I think you've heard enough, and I'm comfortable enough to go in any direction you point me. So what do you want to hear? This is like volunteering. I'm volunteering you.
How to raise my son.
How to raise your son. Incredibly important. I got a lot of tips, because I screwed up with my 3 kids, so I don't want you to make the same mistakes. So if you want to know how to raise your kids, ask parents that have raised their kids, because we all think we've screwed up. Okay, so you want to be stimulated, you want to hear new things, you want to build on the good things you know, you want to learn a little bit about wellness and raising your kid. So probably this one is the most important one. They're all important, but you know, to make someone feel better today, this is probably the most important one, because if we don't raise kids properly, we're totally screwed, right? Isn't that right? Okay, so I've got a slide just for you. The good news is we gave a talk this morning. One guy came up to me and he says, hey, I have to tell you, as he was puffing away on his cigarette, he goes, most of the times this stuff is so boring it's like not even funny. So he goes, I always bring a book and read it, and he goes, good news is I haven't even opened the book yet. So he says, that's really good. He says, other than the smoking stuff, I really enjoyed the presentation. To me, that's an honor. That's a real honor. Okay, so here's the deal. Someone's got you convinced that the healthcare system makes you healthy. The healthcare system's got nothing to do with making you healthy. Maybe 20% of your health is related to the healthcare system. The only thing the healthcare system does is it consumes the dollars away from the things that really make you healthy, and of which education is the most important, right? 50% of Canadians are functionally illiterate. 50% of Canadians are functionally illiterate. I always wonder, why do they have these stupid signs? Can't read, come to literacy class. Like, are you really targeting the sign to the right person? I don't know who makes those campaigns. But the whole point is, we know that your level of education is incredibly important, because that gives you income. Then housing, nutrition, social support networks, and the list just goes on. These are the social determinants of health. And Senator Wilbert Keon put out a report in 2009. Google Senator Keon 2009 Senate report on health determinants, and you'll get an excellent document that takes this and really explains it in a lot of detail. My theory is very simple. Because we're overweight, because we're inactive, we're unhappy. People that are unhappy want to be happy. People that want to be happy do things that make them happy. These things make you happy. All these things make you happy. Those two things intertwined, that represent sex. Now, if you're doing that correctly, that makes you happy. Right? Would you agree? Okay. And if you don't, we can talk later about that. Hamburgers. The bigger, fatter, juicier the hamburger, that makes you happy. That first bite of a hamburger, don't you get that? Wow, that's good. The first slug of a beer, first tip of a glass of wine. I don't smoke, but I'm sure that first drag of a cigarette feels good as well, right? And injecting drugs, I know that makes you happy, because we give patients that all the time, and they're happy when we give it to them. And salt makes you happy. So all these things here make you happy right when? Now. Instant gratification. And what a coincidence. All these things that make you happy right now also cause these illnesses, right? And you can go down, and you can't argue with me. All those things that people do to get happy right now also cause illnesses. And that's why we need a healthcare system. I think that if we invested an enormous amount of money on keeping people active and keeping people underfed with the right foods and keeping them happy, we wouldn't even need a healthcare system. It's amazing. My graduate students have to do this paper every now and then on everybody wakes up in Alberta tomorrow perfectly healthy, there's no disease. $15 billion a year are spent on healthcare right now. Take that $15 billion and keep people healthy. The last thing they build is a healthcare system. The last thing they build is the healthcare system. And yet what do? We need more money, because the promise that doctors and nurses make is, oh, please give us more money, we'll make things better. Well, we're only spending $194 billion a year in Canada. Is anybody getting any healthier? No. So the premise that building more hospitals will make you healthier is a figment of somebody's imagination. And then there's no performance measures whatsoever. We give $194 billion to a system that has absolutely no accountability. So you can see by now, nurses hate me, doctors hate me. So I'm working on all of you, okay? I want to be lonely at the end of this presentation.